Hello and welcome to my room. Now, as you can probably tell, this is not the dorm room that a lot of people got acquainted with in 2020 during the virtual show era. I have moved out of college and I am officially a full-time professional magician living in South Philadelphia. So this is my room now. I'm actually able to go out into the real world and do shows, which is wonderful. But whenever I'm not doing shows, my days are filled with practicing tricks, booking new shows, and also looking through old projects, which takes us to this video, because these are clips from my 3 Questions podcast. Now, the 3 Questions podcast started because I wanted to talk to all of the magicians that I love so much, and I wanted to ask them questions not only about magic, but also just performing as a whole and their other interests that they loved. So I reached out to so many people, worldwide talents that you've seen on television that are touring the world currently and are some of the best at our craft. And I was really, really lucky to be able to talk to pretty much everyone who made me the magician who I am today. So what you're going to see in this video is just a compiled list of clips of a ton of my favorite little moments from these shows. You're going to see little Zoom screens. I'm probably just going to be nodding a lot on the right, everybody else on the left, but I hope you have a wonderful time and enjoy these videos. Not all of them are about magic. A few of them are about all different types of things, because I always like to pepper in little things that I love too, about movies, about Broadway, all that different stuff. And also, if you need to book a magic show, please, Jake Strong Magic. That would help me out a ton. But you're here now, so enjoy the video.
And I think that that's brilliant. That's the sort of thinking that magicians need to be applying towards their magic. I know one magician who does this great thing where he measures a cabinet before his assistant gets in, and he says, I want to show you that this is 10 inches across. That's barely wide enough for any. He takes like this giant yardstick and he measures it, shows the audience that's 10 inches, right? And it wasn't until like I went to go see him and hang out backstage, I looked at the ruler, I'm like, you son of a, oh my God. And each inch is closer to like 1.5 inches. So on the ruler, yeah, it's going to look like 10 inches, but guess what? It's not. It's more than that. And that's the kind of stuff that magicians need to think about, fooling audiences in ways that isn't going to get an applause. We're used to, after every single move, getting the applause, amazing. But as opposed to doing it like, oh, do that exact same move undercover. I think it's not the master move or whatever it is, but as the card's going down onto the table or those sorts of things. You don't always need the applause. You don't always need the approval. I know it's tough because we're used to practicing in secret and not getting applause. And so we want the applause where we can get it.
What we're looking for in our books and our tricks and our downloads is polish. We're looking for somebody who comes to us with a trick and can say, all right, here's the deal. This trick has opened my show for the last 10 years. I have done it 4,000 times on cruise ships, and I did it 6 times a day at a theme park, and then 27 times a week for 4 years at the Magic Castle. Because then we can sit there and go, God, every inch of this thing has been worked out. Or when we ask a question, they say, I thought about making it in plastic, but the reason I make it in metal is because after about 6 months, the plastic part cracks and this has to be metal. The reason I do it like this is because one time when I did it, somebody asked to see that. And there's just a polish that comes through performing something.
I want a blue dragon. And my wife, I've talked about my wife. Every time I talk about my wife in this episode, I've said something bad about her. Like, she's complained. I swear she's the most awesome person in the world. She keeps me fairly grounded. But she's like, you don't need a blue dragon. It means nothing to you. Because I want all my tattoos mean something to me. There's a meaning behind it. She's like, you don't need a blue dragon. Because the only reason I wanted a blue dragon was I like the color blue in the tattoo. I wanted the bold blue tattoo. And I thought I got room on this arm to put some. I thought I could come up around here, and then the head of it could be right here. And I said, but I just want one. She's like, you're not getting the blue dragon. It means nothing to you. I'm like, yeah, but I just want one. So for like a couple months, I kept talking about it. She's like, you're not getting the blue dragon. It means nothing. So finally, I started calling Sebastian, our now 20-year-old, Blue Dragon. I changed his name in our phones to Blue Dragon. Had people at our church. I'm like, hey, anytime you talk to Tab, my wife, I said, ask, and you talk about Sebastian, call him Blue Dragon. So everybody's going up to my wife and saying, hey, I hear Blue Dragon is getting ready to go into the Fire Academy. She's like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what's going on here. So now I'm like, I need to get a Blue Dragon because that's what we call our son. And she's like, no, we don't. We don't call him Blue Dragon. She's like, you're just an idiot. I'm like, yeah, that's true.
And so, for example, when I created Dee Dee, who was my kids show character, it was shortly after I won my first Guinness World Record and I started getting a lot of international attention. And I realized, I don't know how aware of it, self-aware of it I was at the time. I realized a little bit more in retrospect that I think I was dealing with my relationship to fame. So Dee Dee is this hyper energetic character that's always dropping names and thinks she's super famous, and she's got this theme song, and she basically tries to convince the kids that she's famous. But she's definitely not. And it's kind of like a Daffy Duck situation. The kids are kind of in on the idea that she's kind of nobody, and her hubris gets the best of her. And that was sort of me digesting, I think, where I was at the time, but also kind of dealing with the way people were treating me, which was, I was in my mid-20s and people were treating me like I was far more established than I was, and it was very unusual.
But I like to think that my mindset going the second time was the somewhat similar as the first time. I wanted to do something that I thought represented me well, that I felt very comfortable with, and that was my go-to. If anything, for me, on my very personal journey, what I did on the second appearance is a piece of magic that I conceived from the ground up. A lot of influence from, well, then again, Juan Tamariz right there, but that is something that I do consider an original piece of magic. That was a nice bonus for me, for me to be able to showcase something that I conceived from the ground up.
Has there been anything that has kind of stuck out to you as you've gone doing all these different kind of consulting work, maybe it be producing, because I know that you worked very closely with Burt Wonderstone during that project. Did that stick out to you, or was there anything else that kind of has stuck out to you as something that you just kind of really enjoyed?
I've enjoyed it all, man. I'm grateful for all the experiences I've had. One of the greatest experiences was playing Thurston on stage, being directed by Jim Steinmeier. That for me was a highlight of my career for sure. Being able to embody the likeness, the voice, the characteristics, the mannerisms, the staging of Thurston was something so that I'll always hold dear. So that was one of the highlights for me, for sure.
In fact, Mike Caveney was at a cocktail party once. He was telling me that he was there and there was a very learned man there. He was a great educator and scientist. I forget who it was, a Carl Sagan type person, somebody very well known and learned. And Mike was very intimidated to meet him. And the man asked Mike, "What do you do for a living?" And Mike kind of, looked at his shoes and shuffled his feet. He goes, "Oh, I'm a magician," kind of almost apologetically. And this man said, "What? Every child should have that as in their curriculum. The art of magic should be in every student's curriculum because it embodies all of these disciplines that are important, blah, 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 blah." And he just listed them off. And then Mike said he just felt like 10 feet tall after that. He said, "I agree."
I'm going to have to go with Card College, but I'm going to have to go with I'm going to have to go with the French version of Card College, specifically because the French version was written with Volume 1 and Volume 2 published together as a book. So I can cheat here because it is one book. I'm playing by my own rules, but it is Volume 1 and Volume 2 in the same thing. And I believe that is also the one where Giobi paid Giobi and the publisher worked together to create a binding where it would lay flat, because one of the most annoying things to me in the world is books that don't lay flat when I'm trying to do something with two hands. Yeah. And I would also get to learn French.
All right, so here's why I hate Jennifer Aniston, right? I always, I wasn't that particular to her, but all right, a couple things. Number one, you can't buy a loaf of bread in America for the last 20 years, except for maybe the last 2. When you don't see her face on one of those magazines at the supermarket. Who deigned her? No, she's another. I can walk in any mall in America and see 20 cuter girls, and every 10 minutes of Jennifer. Why that? Well, because her dad was a big Hollywood wheel, and she got in a big Hollywood show. And I don't know. To me, say Lucille Ball does somersaults in her grave when Aniston signed a check for one. She was getting $1 million an episode, and Lucille Ball, talented woman, beyond measure. if she made $1 million in her lifetime. I don't know, but it doesn't matter because Jennifer Aniston, to me, she just reads the cards. I'm like, whatever.
Okay, then the notion was, how cool would it be to do like a TV show of this stuff? And I literally thought to myself, okay, if I really put my mind to it, I bet I could make 8 really good episodes of Hidden Camera Magic. And that would be really hard. I mean, every Magic Clerk segment that I did 8 of them, and they were like 4.5 minutes long, were so hard to come up with. It was really hard. It took the work of like Derek Delgadio and Handsome Jack and Derek Hughes. And we were like rattling our brains trying to come up with stuff that would be cool. I mean, we were just in one location, so whatever. So I never thought for in a million years we'd have more than 100 episodes. So even now looking back at a question like, how do you come up with the ideas? It still seems like a mystery to me.
So I don't know if you remember, but one of the first times that I actually met you, it was at Tannen's Magic Camp. I went to bed, normal night, and then I woke up mid-conversation with you because I had actually sleptwalked into a conversation that you were having.
Like in the lobby?
Late at night, yes. It was 2 a.m. It was absolutely terrifying for me because that was probably the most confused I've ever been. Because it was just one of those nights. And
trust us, we were confused too. I think we were just talking in the lobby, and then some campers started drifting. And we're like, "Is he awake?" That was It was. Thankfully, you were okay.
Yes.
Yeah. That was a lot of thoughts about Marlo. A lot of unconscious thoughts about Marlo.
Yes, that was the first time anybody's ever seen me do that. So that was so confusing.
Thank God you sleep with clothes on. My God, thank God.
Because language is important, but also making sure you're teaching, if you're going to teach magic to a group of people, teach it so that it's completely gender neutral, which means no pockets, it requires you to have big hands, because I guess women have small hands, supposedly. That's not accurate, but a lot of people think that. And so just doing things along those lines, making sure that you've got a blank slate when you're coming into a situation and people can build upon it, I think is one thing that's really important. So the best example I can give is if you're teaching a sponge ball routine, don't teach a sponge ball routine where the third secret sponge ball is in your front pocket or your jacket pocket, because chances are a woman or girls aren't going to have that resource. So teach it neutral. I just teach it everybody has a box. And then I explain what the box could be replaced by. You should not use the box when performing this for an audience. You should use your own holdout. You should use your own hiding place. Figure out what that means to you. That way you're not putting a "this is how things are" statement on stuff. That way anybody can learn.
And I have to go back to one of my favorite quotes from the futurist and science fiction author Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is virtually indistinguishable from magic. Well, magic has had a history of utilizing science and technology as a secret device before the public knew about these things. So, going back to Hero of Alexandria, use of hydraulics as methods to create magical effects, audio illusions. There's all kinds of things that could be used that the average person didn't know about, and magicians use them successfully. I'm thinking, use of video is no different, and the use of black art. Look, black art's been around for years. It was a stage technique, and it worked because of knowledge of how the video receptors, our eyes, work, and how they focus and don't focus, and the use of a border of white light surrounding darkened stage. Hey, that created it. Well, now you're dealing with a camera, and a camera is an eye. And if you know how to trick that eye, you can make that work close up.
When it was filmed, it was like 2009. I was the reigning world champion of close-up magic by FISM, and I was working in Europe at the time. I was in Paris. And my head was totally on doing shows and performing. And I got this phone call out of the blue from these producers going, "Hi, we want to have you on a show called Fool Us. You'll film in London." And I was like, "Yeah, no thanks." And they were like, "What?" And I said, "Not interested." And a few days later, I got another email going, yeah, we really want you for this Fool Us thing. We think you'd be perfect, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yep, not interested. And they said, oh, it stars Penn and Teller. I'm like, still not interested. And why? I said, I'm not interested in a show that's called Fool Us, because my magic's not about fooling. My magic's about entertaining. And the entire premise of that just seems to be anti what I believe. And the guy said, wow, that's a shame. Johnny Thompson said you'd be perfect for it. I went, what? He said, Johnny Thompson said before. He said, Johnny Thompson has something to do with it? He said, yeah, he's like the judge of it who's putting together. He's working with Penn and Teller. It's like, yeah, what date is it?
For me, I respond really well when I watch another magician give the illusion of wiping away his script and having a very pure, real moment with the audience. Now, I say wiping away the illusion because they very well may be sticking to a really tight script, but they're letting everything sort of unfold naturally in front of them and having a real conversation with their spectators. So it's less about now the card goes back into the middle of the deck, and what's this, right? There doesn't have this feeling like I'm just giving you the same script I've given every single one of my performances over the years. To me, that is a perfect example of something where spectators can't point to it, they just feel it. They feel like they have a connection with the magician because they were having a real moment versus they were just one spectator in the 100 shows that you've done over the last 6 months and you're giving the exact same lines over and over and over again.
And then more recently, Hamilton.
I didn't like Hamilton necessarily. My children liked it. I would have to give Hamilton 4.5, 5. And I'm going to tell you why. The acting's great. But I'm more the old school where what song out of Hamilton can compete with anything off of Wizard of Oz?
True.
It's that kind of thing. They put too much, I know it was supposed to be hip hop, but they put too much hip hop in it for it to be notable, for it to be something where I could do a little medley and hum it out where people could remember it more. Costumes are great, acting's great, but I would say that would be a 5. I'll put that more with the Fiddler on the Roof kind of thing.
And so I had to go and find a real job. I had never had a real job before, so I went back to school, finished college, and then I ended up at Whirlpool. And Whirlpool has this great program called Lean and Continuous Improvement on top of your job. And my job was to develop their YouTube channel for their service and support. So while I was doing that, I was also going to Whirlpool University and learning everything that I could about this lean manufacturing process called Lean and Continuous Improvement. And some people know it as Black Belt or Six Sigma. It's all part of that. And in the midst of that, I started thinking, wait a minute, this is almost like theater. It's like theater directing, because when you are a director, you are trying to lean out movements so that people are naturally moving on the stage. And it's just the same thing like a choreographer. It's like, no, you've got 2 left feet. You got to pivot this way and that way. And there's too many people on the stage, so you're trying to get the best performance that you can possibly do by continually improving it and asking lots of questions like, why? Why am I doing this? Why is that set up over there?
And here, I'll be happy to share, this is the point that I think is where you get the 5-star reviews for. At the moment, you've just done the great show. And they're paying you the balance that they owe you, and they go giving you the money, and they're tipping you, and they go, oh my God, you were great. Here, this is the money I owe you. Here's a little extra. You go, wait, those words you just said, you were great. Will you write that in a 5-star review? That's the moment right there to catch them. If you call them up the next day, if you send them a postcard in the mail, and oh, by the way, they're not hot. They're cool. They've all cooled down. It's all a memory now. If you get them just in the moment that they're going, oh my God, you were great when you did that thing with the thing that was so, that's it. Would you write that down? Write that. I'm going to send you a link right now. As soon as I pack my car up, I'll send it from my phone. So you'll have an email, you'll have a text, whatever, with the link directly where to say that online on Google. He was great. He was wonderful. He did a great job. He made my mom feel so happy when it was her special day. It was my wife's anniversary, and he killed it. say those exact words you just said to me, and now that's a lock cinch.
Well, one of the best things that I heard was you said that after a show, a kid came up to you and said, "Hey, I love your show so much. I went into the trash and I started to take stuff out and build a robot." I think that that's awesome that you're giving that to kids. That you're giving that to kids.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, dude. Well, I mean, the reason why that's so important to me and in my heart is because of accessibility. You know, like that's very, if you see over the years, the themes are always super humble materials like cardboard, tape, hot glue, and then we're adding the servo motor, which is still super accessible. The Arduino, what is it, $20-$30? You know, so that idea is it's why I love art so much. You know, like that's why in my show I talk about Andy Warhol and Basquiat and Alexander Calder. These are artists that took very humble materials, but we fell in love with objects that we thought were irrelevant in life, like the tomato can with Andy Warhol. You know, it's like you see it at the grocery store, but now it's an iconic symbol because someone brought importance to it. And I like that idea. And I'm trying to do that with my magic.